Hello. Okay, first things first, I am not a terrorist, nor am I affiliated with any terrorist organizations, nor will I ever be. Information redistribution is here and it is here to stay for as long as I'm alive and the ones that come after. It has been translated and keeps being translated into many different languages all across the globe, and that's how we intend to keep it because information is education basically, and that needs to be spread across the world. Retranslated for easier reach, it's basically one of the biggest classes on the planet. So yeah, um, we all know about the attacks that happened in Paris, and a lot of people are asking why there's more solidarity for France as opposed to Kenya or Syria or most other countries that have been affected by terrorist organizations. And you have to look at the geographic location. It happened in France and it happened in a metropolis. A metropolis, one of Europe's developed countries, right? You cannot take that out. It's supposed to be one of the most secure places to be in Europe and in the world. But the way that the terrorist attacks occurred and happened showed that there are holes that can still be manipulated by those who want to spread terror. Now, when we say terror, a lot of people have that boogeyman perception of what is exactly terrorist. Terrorists are basically people that have no real agenda. They don't want peace. They don't want collaboration or democratic negotiations, because if they did, then that would be what they would be showing to the international community. And they have had a lot of time to display their empathy, their compassion, their passion for the people. But as opposed to that, we keep seeing them being shown on television, on the internet, dismembering people's heads, real people, shooting children. The refugee crisis that has occurred is due to people no longer feeling safe in their country. Safe as in you can't trust your neighbors, you can't trust your government, and you can't trust those rebels who oppose everybody, not just the government, based on reasons that keep changing as they keep spreading terror. Now, isolation, of course, they can be isolated. This means the weapons that they get and the funds that they have need to be frozen. They have no more weapons, they have no more funds coming in. They cannot trade for anything because they are identified and thus they are contained. Right? When they are contained, their leader is asked to speak on their behalf to try and bring about some sort of a diplomatic route for all this influx of violence. And most of the time, these leaders don't, as opposed to using the diplomatic um, platform that they are given, which is global at the moment. Right? If they wanted global solidarity, they would have gotten it, but they are in the wrong, and we all know this. The facade that they try to bring about as the liberation struggle against nobody can no longer be tolerated. The same thing happened in Kenya. Um, in Kenya, they got isolated, and some of their leadership that shot the children at the university um, were they were shown retaliation basically. But that situation in Kenya is different because Kenya, as a state of its own, as a country, is also facing a lot of ridicule from the international community, including myself, about the way that they violate human rights. And I'm talking about the gays, lesbians, or transgenders in Kenya who are facing human rights violations based on their sexual orientation. That doesn't make sense. These people can also contribute to the society, to the community, to the economy, and their sexual orientation has absolutely nothing to do with that, right? So, in terms of law, human rights violations, in terms of the UN's, what can I call it now? The UN's Agenda 2016, it's against the law, global law. That's why we have the International Criminal Court. And let's not forget, this is also the country that had tribal wars where one tribe tried to completely wipe out the other tribe. So we have the history and the context of each of these countries in mind. But these terrorist organizations are not what they are trying to parade to be as liberation movements. And they show this by what they want to display. And what do they display? They display punishment by way of violence, and it's brutal violence. Now, we all know guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare, in terms of liberation struggles, was understandable. The international community did not have the capacity to mitigate these battles as they do now, right? So we have to take that into perspective, that there's more technology, weapons have advanced, and also with history as a lesson. Um, when coming to the idea of wiping out terror universally, um, first it has to be isolated, because there are always innocent people that they use as human shields, right? So it's not just about weapons and the funds, but it's also about setting up borders where they cannot impact the peaceful citizens who are not actually involved or directly involved, as well as child soldiers and so forth. This is all taken into perspective. So when you look at what happened in France, that was collaboration. It was a collaborative effort by a lot of groups infiltrating young people's minds. You can call it brainwashing, but it's actually, you can think of it as evil persuasion, when they give them purpose, and that purpose is to rebel, but to rebel for an agenda that is greater than them. And most of the time, this agenda is against other people. So they look for misguided young people most of the time, and they feed them this sense of being an avenger, like there's something that you need to avenge. And most of the times, due to discrimination and isolation within those countries, that factor cannot be taken out. The Islamophobia cannot be taken out of perspective, that it does end up targeting innocent people who just want to live their life based on their beliefs. So isolating religion away from it, and as well as the efforts to free certain people away from it, that is what happened in France. They have basically shown the world they don't care, they can do whatever they want, and by retaliation will take all factors into account everywhere. So as the world is moved right now, and there's a lot of panic about security, um, it did send out a shockwave. But the retaliation this time is well thought out, and it's not just a retaliation based on vengeance, but actually a retaliation based on ending these non-stop violations against human beings by fellow yes, it's hard to consider them as human beings, but they are, by fellow human beings who have misguided agendas and end up perpetuating a lot of evil. So that fact that they took a city that is secure in a first world country, that's what has sent out shockwaves. The thought that, just like 9/11, that America couldn't be safe, now France can't be safe. And with the Syrian refugee crisis, as well as the Syrian war, it's time to clean up.